She thought she had the perfect exit strategy and enough legal loopholes to bleed me dry for years. But she forgot one thing. Secrets always have a footprint. I did not need a lawyer to win this. I just needed one name. Watch how her entire composure shatters the second I mention him. My name is Arthur. For 9 years, I lived what looked like the perfect American dream. I was married to a woman named Evelyn. Evelyn was elegant, calculating, and possessed a quiet brilliance that I always admired. We lived in a beautiful home in the suburbs of Seattle. I ran an independent cybersecurity consulting firm, and she managed a high-end art gallery downtown. To the outside world, we were a power couple, but behind closed doors, the warmth had been slowly draining from our marriage for the last 2 years. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. I thought the silence at the dinner table was just the result of 2 busy professionals being exhausted. I was completely wrong. While I was trying to figure out how to save our marriage, Evelyn was meticulously planning to destroy me. It started on a Tuesday evening. I came home from a long week of client meetings. The house was unusually quiet. I walked into the kitchen and found a thick manila envelope resting exactly in the center of the marble island. Next to it was a set of my house keys. I opened the envelope. It was a formal petition for divorce. I felt the air leave my lungs, but the real shock came when I read the demands. Evelyn was not just leaving me. She was trying to completely erase my financial existence. The settlement she presented was nothing short of a legal execution. She was demanding 70% of our total joint assets. She wanted exclusive ownership of our primary residence. She demanded permanent spousal support, claiming her gallery was failing, and she had sacrificed her earning potential for my career. And to ensure she got everything, she had hired a man named Richard Vance. Richard Vance was the most ruthless, expensive, and aggressive divorce attorney in the state. He was a shark who specialized in bankrupting husbands. Evelyn had timed it perfectly. She presented the papers right before my company was about to sign a massive government contract. She knew a long, messy legal battle would destroy my public reputation and cost me the deal. She had backed me into a corner. She expected me to panic, hire my own expensive lawyers, and slowly bleed to death in family court. But Evelyn made one fatal miscalculation. She forgot what I do for a living. I am a cybersecurity architect. I do not panic under pressure. I analyze data. I find vulnerabilities, and I break complex systems. I realized instantly that the math did not make sense. Evelyn was smart, but hiring Richard Vance required a retainer fee of at least $50,000. If her gallery was truly failing, as she claimed in the legal documents, she could never afford him. Someone else was funding her legal war. Someone else was advising her. Someone else was waiting in the shadows. I did not call a lawyer. I did not call Evelyn to scream or beg. I simply sat down in my computer terminal and went to work. When you live with someone for 9 years, you share a digital ecosystem. Evelyn thought she had covered her tracks. She had changed the passwords on her phone, her laptop, and her personal banking accounts. She thought that was enough. But normal people do not understand how deep digital footprints actually go. I started with a wireless router in our home. I am the network administrator for our house. I pulled the historical traffic logs for the past 6 months. I was not looking at the content of her messages. I was looking at the traffic flow. I noticed that every single night, exactly between 11 o'clock and 1 in the morning, her phone was transmitting heavy packets of encrypted data to a specific, repeating internet protocol address. I traced the address. It belonged to a secure, private messaging server hosted in Switzerland. She was using a burner application to communicate with someone for hours every single night. Next, I looked at our shared cloud storage. Evelyn had deleted thousands of photos before serving me the papers, but she forgot that cloud servers retain hidden metadata and cache files for 30 days after deletion. I ran a data recovery script and pulled the raw files. Most of them were harmless pictures of art exhibits and expensive lunches, but then I found a photo she had taken 3 weeks ago. It was a simple picture of a glass of wine resting on a dark wooden table in a dimly lit restaurant. She had sent it to someone. The image itself meant nothing, but the metadata embedded inside the image file was a goldmine. The exchangeable image file format data contained the exact global positioning system coordinates of where the photo was taken, along with a precise timestamp. I plugged the coordinates into a satellite map. The location was not a restaurant. It was a luxury high-rise condominium building in the financial district. a building that required biometric security access. I cross-referenced the timestamp on the photo with our joint credit card statements. During that exact time, Evelyn had told me she was attending a weekend art retreat in Portland. She lied. She was in a luxury penthouse, 3 miles from my office. The pieces were falling into place, but I still needed a name. I needed to know who owned the penthouse. The property records for that building were hidden behind corporate privacy shields. The owner was listed as a blind trust, but a blind trust still has to pay property taxes, and those tax records have routing numbers. I used a few ethical hacking techniques I reserve for my corporate clients to trace the origin of the tax payments. The money came from an offshore account managed by a private equity firm. The managing partner of that firm was a man named Marcus Thorne. Marcus Thorne was not just a wealthy investor. He was a billionaire real estate developer. But more importantly, Marcus Thorne was the silent financial backer for Richard Vance, the exact same shark lawyer Evelyn had hired to destroy me. Suddenly, the entire conspiracy became crystal clear. Evelyn was not just having a random affair. She was sleeping with a billionaire who was using his personal attack dog attorney to bankrupt me. They planned to bleed me dry, force me to sell my cybersecurity company to cover the legal fees, and then Marcus Thorne was going to buy my company for pennies through a shadow corporation. It was not just a divorce. It was a hostile corporate takeover, disguised as a marital dispute. Evelyn and Marcus thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They thought I was a blind, emotional husband who would fight a traditional legal battle. They had no idea I was sitting in the dark, watching their entire digital empire burn. I spent the next 2 weeks playing the perfect victim. I ignored my own lawyer's advice to fight back aggressively. Instead, I sent Evelyn's lawyer an email asking for a final mediation meeting. I told him I was emotionally exhausted. I told him I could not afford a long trial and was willing to surrender. I made myself look completely broken and desperate. Richard Vance eagerly accepted. He thought he had broken me in record time. They scheduled a meeting for Friday afternoon in the grand glass conference room of his luxury law firm. When Friday arrived, the sky over Seattle was dark and raining heavily. I walked into the law firm wearing a simple gray suit. I carried no briefcase. I brought no lawyer. I just had a single manila folder tucked under my arm. I was escorted into the massive glass conference room. Evelyn was already sitting there. She looked immaculate. She wore a tailored black dress and a subtle, arrogant smile. Richard Vance sat next to her, wearing a $10,000 suit, tapping a gold pen on the polished mahogany table. He looked at me like I was a deer caught in a trap. "Please, Arthur, sit down," Richard said, gesturing to the empty leather chair across from them. His voice dripped with fake sympathy. I sat down. I placed my single manila folder on the table. I kept my hands folded perfectly still. Richard pushed a massive stack of legal documents across the table toward me. He said, "Arthur, my client is willing to be generous. If you sign these papers today, we will not pursue a forensic audit of your company. You will hand over the house, the requested 70% of the assets, and agree to the permanent spousal support. In exchange, we will let you walk away quietly. If you refuse, we go to court on Monday, and I promise you, I will make sure you lose everything, including your business." Evelyn leaned forward. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "Just sign it, Arthur. It is over. You lost. Do not make this harder than it has to be." She was completely confident. She believed she held every single card in the deck. She believed her exit strategy was flawless. I did not look at the papers. I did not look at Richard Vance. I kept my eyes locked entirely on Evelyn. I let the silence stretch for 10 long seconds. The only sound in the room was the rain hitting the glass windows. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm, low, and completely devoid of emotion. I said, "Evelyn, you presented a very compelling narrative. You claim your gallery is failing. You claim you need my money to survive. You claim you are a victim of a neglected marriage. But there's a slight mathematical error in your calculations." Richard Vance frowned. He said, "There are no errors, Arthur. This is a standard asset division model." I ignored him. I kept staring at Evelyn. I said, "You see, Evelyn, the problem with digital secrets is that they never truly disappear. They just wait patiently in the dark for someone who knows how to find them, like a photograph of a wine glass taken at midnight in a luxury penthouse. Evelyn's confident smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Her breathing suddenly stopped. I leaned closer to the table. I said, "You thought you were very clever using encrypted Swiss servers. You thought deleting your cloud backups was enough. But you forgot that blind trusts leave tax footprints. You forgot that offshore accounts leave routing metadata." I reached out and opened my manila folder. I pulled out a single piece of paper. It was a printed document showing the exact ownership structure of the penthouse, linking it directly to the private equity firm. I pushed the paper across the table. Then I delivered the final, fatal blow. I said, "Tell me, Evelyn, does Marcus Thorne know you are using his personal attorney to steal my company so he can buy it through a proxy? Or did you just convince him you were a poor, helpless housewife who needed a billionaire to save her?" The reaction was instantaneous and absolute. Evelyn's face turned the color of pure ash. Her arrogant posture completely collapsed. She physically shrank back into her leather chair, as if she had been struck by lightning. Her eyes widened in pure, unfiltered terror. Richard Vance dropped his gold pen. It clattered loudly against the mahogany table. The smug shark attorney suddenly looked like a man standing on a landmine. He looked at Evelyn. 10 bake at me, his professional mask entirely shattered. He realized instantly that his own career was now in fatal jeopardy because he was illegally participating in a shadow corporate takeover without disclosing his massive conflict of interest. I did not raise my voice. I did not yell. I just watched her psychological fortress crumble into dust. I said, "Here is the new reality. Evelyn, I am not giving you 70%. I am not giving you the house, and I am certainly not paying you a single dime of spousal support." I reached into my folder and pulled out a different set of documents. My own documents. I pushed them across the table toward her. I said, "This is my settlement offer. You walk away with exactly what you brought into this marriage. Nothing. You will surrender all claims to the house, the investments, and my company. You will sign a total non-disclosure agreement. If you refuse, I will walk out of this room and immediately forward this entire folder to the State Bar Association, the Federal Trade Commission, and every major news outlet in the city. Richard will lose his low license for fraud, and Marcus Thorne will face federal investigation for corporate espionage." Evelyn was trembling. She looked at Richard for help, but the ruthless attorney was completely frozen. He knew I had them trapped in a flawless corner. He nodded slowly at her, a silent confirmation of their total defeat. Evelyn picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking so violently she could barely hold it. Tears of pure humiliation streamed down her face. She did not say a single word. She did not try to argue. The woman who walked into the room believing she was an unstoppable queen was now reduced to a terrified ghost. She signed the papers, every single page. When she was finished, I pulled the documents back to my side of the table. I stood up, buttoned my gray suit jacket, and picked up my empty manila folder. I looked down at her one last time. I said, "You had the perfect exit strategy, Evelyn. You just picked the wrong man to play games with. Tell Marcus I said hello." I turned around and walked out of the glass conference room. I left the building, stepped out into the Seattle rain, and took a deep breath of completely free air. It was the most satisfying victory of my life. I did not just survive her trap. I dismantled her entire reality with a single name.